Hi, welcome back to another episode here on Creepy with Coffee. I'm Kim, your storyteller. Well, I have read your comment about the audio, and I do notice that some of the videos that I've released, the audio is slightly on a low side. So for this video, I'm gonna max the volume and hopefully it's gonna be okay. So for those who have put in comments saying that the audio it's rather low, please let me know whether this video, the audio, it's okay or not, yeah? Right. Now for tonight's story, have you ever walked into a restaurant, smelled delicious food, and felt an irresistible urge to eat there? But what if that craving wasn't entirely your own? What if something unseen was influencing your appetite? Tonight I'll be sharing in eerie encounters with Pelaris, a supernatural charm used to lure customers into restaurants. And trust me, once you hear tonight's story, you might want to think twice of where you're gonna have your meal. Like usual, before we get on to our stories, please help me like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And for those that have a little bit of time on your hand, please do put in some nice comments down below in the comment section. Now, let's get on to the story.
This is Creepy with Coffee.
A long time ago, my husband was always the designated driver for his parents whenever they traveled far. I would usually tag along as well. Whenever we went out, we would stop by restaurants to eat. And that's how I first learned about Pelaris, a supernatural charm used to attract customers. Well, these are compilations of 3 stories. We'll start with story number 1. We were on our way to Padang Besar because my mother-in-law wanted to buy some things. Since it was already noon, we stopped at a nasi campur, which is something like a mixed rice, a stall where they have plenty of food and they will give you plain rice and you just take up your vegetable, meat, and or some of us call it economy mixed rice restaurant to eat. My father-in-law got out first to find us a table. Well, the restaurant was packed. Well, it was lunchtime after all. After he found the table, we sat down and started thinking about what to eat. Suddenly, my father-in-law said, "Well, let's just have drinks here. We'll eat somewhere else." I was confused. Why weren't we eating here? I thought we stopped for lunch. We were already starving. But I noticed that my mother-in-law and my husband stayed silent, so I didn't dare to say anything. After finishing our drinks and paying, we continued our journey to Padang Besar. The whole time, my curiosity grew stronger. Well, eventually, I just couldn't hold it anymore. I had to ask. So I asked Abba, which is referring to the father, why we didn't eat at the restaurant just now. And that is when my father-in-law answered, well, there was a huge monkey with red eyes squatting on top of their rice pot. No wonder people were lining up like crazy to eat there. They were using a very, very strong Pelaris. Turns out my father-in-law had the ability to see restaurants that use supernatural charms. I had only heard bits and pieces about this Pelaris, but I never knew there were so many different kinds. I was fascinated. Well, in the end, we just ate at KFC in Padang Besar. I guess KFC doesn't use Pelaris, huh? And story number 2. That night, we were on our way back from Kelantan. We attended a wedding of my father-in-law's friend's children. It was quite late by the time we left the Greek area. Everyone was tired and hungry. My mother-in-law had already dozed off, while my father-in-law kept my husband company as he drove. At one junction, we saw a Tom Yum restaurant. The place was brightly lit with colorful lights, making it look lively and inviting. We see there was a lot of people inside as well, and there was a huge signage up front that says Tom Yum. My husband pulled into the parking lot. I got out first, waiting for the others while glancing around the restaurant. In the middle of the dining area, there was this large tree. I'm not sure why the restaurant is built around the tree, but the whole thing, the restaurant decor, was beautiful. Suddenly, my husband called out to me, Sayang, sayang. He said we should find another place to eat. This time, I didn't even question it. I already had a feeling. Once we got back into the car, I immediately asked my father-in-law what he saw. He sighed. There was a tall, dark creature standing by that tree. Every time the waiters served their food, the creature would walk over the dishes with its feet touching the food on the table. Well, I swallowed hard. My stomach felt uneasy just thinking about it. To the naked eye, the place looked warm and welcoming, but in reality, well, only God knows. After that, my husband drove straight to Alo Star. We stopped at a Nasi Kandar restaurant before heading home. Alhamdulillah, everything was fine. And the last story. It was the weekend. My husband and I usually visited my mother-in-law's on weekends. The night, even though it was already 9 p.m., I was feeling hungry. My husband invited his parents to join us, but my mother-in-law didn't feel like going out, so it was just the three of us, my husband, my father-in-law, and myself. My husband didn't want to go far, so he decided to stop at the first restaurant that he saw. We found a small eatery in a single shop lot. It wasn't too big, but he had a decent number of customers. It wasn't entirely full, but it wasn't entirely empty as well. We chose to sit outside where it was cooler. After waiting for nearly 5 minutes, no waiter came to take our order. Didn't they see us? I questioned myself. Then my father-in-law stood up and walked inside. Maybe he was going to call a waiter. After a moment, he came back out and simply just said, "Let's go." Without hesitation, we left. In the end, we ate at a small store run by my father-in-law's friend. Well, it was a bit further away. It takes like at least 20 minutes or 30 minutes to get there. But at least it was safe. After we finished our meal, my father-in-law finally spoke. The moment I stepped inside, said my father-in-law, I caught a terrible stench. It smelled like human waste or a rotting carcass. Inside, the smell was even stronger. I nearly gagged. Well, the strange thing was, we didn't smell anything. As in my husband and I, we didn't smell anything. The shop smelled like just any other restaurant. It smelled of food, right? So, well, some people were willing to use the filthiest things as Pelaris. If we have eaten there, what would happen to us? Well, only God knows, I guess. Well, the person who wrote this story also put in saying that the father-in-law is actually, or the late father-in-law was actually an ustaz who always helped those in need. He was knowledgeable in Islamic healing practices, friendly and humble, but he passed away 8 years ago. So the person say they all miss this father-in-law very, very much. So Al-Fatiha to the father-in-law. Well, have you heard stories like this? Stories about Pelaris whereby people use supernatural charms to attract their customers. I've heard a few whereby people use the filthiest of things, like for example, a used underwear. Well, if you have heard stories like this, please do share it with us. You know my email, or you can just put it down below in the comment section. Well, that's all for this episode. Until the next one, I'm Kim. This is Creepy with Coffee. I'll catch you in the next episode.